Request denied. Flight school candidates must meet minimum physical requirements. Your application is rejected. The automated email hit Lieutenant Olivia Brown's inbox for the third consecutive year, each rejection citing regulations that seemed designed specifically to keep her out of the cockpit. At 27 years old, with dark hair, determined brown eyes, and a mechanical engineering degree that made her one of the best aircraft maintenance officers on base, Olivia had spent 5 years fixing fighters while watching less qualified pilots destroy them through incompetence. But when a surprise enemy attack hit the airbase with overwhelming force and every flyable aircraft was needed for defense, the base commander made a desperate decision that changed everything, authorized the maintenance officer who knew every aircraft system better than anyone else to fly combat missions. What happened next would prove that sometimes the best pilot on base is the one everyone refused to let fly, until enemy fire and impossible odds revealed capabilities that regulations and prejudice had kept hidden for years. Lieutenant Olivia Brown stood in the maintenance hangar at 0530 hours, conducting her daily inspection of the F-16 Fighting Falcons under her supervision. As the senior aircraft maintenance officer, she was responsible for ensuring these fighters remained combat-ready despite the constant stress of training operations. She ran her hand along the leading edge of an F-16's wing, checking for stress cracks that could compromise structural integrity during high-G maneuvers. Her engineering background made her uniquely effective at diagnosing problems that other maintenance officers missed. She understood not just how to fix systems, but why they failed and how to prevent future failures. "Lieutenant Brown," Captain Jake Morrison called from across the hangar. Morrison was one of the squadron's more experienced pilots with over 800 flight hours. "My bird's got a slight vibration in the stick during high-speed runs. Can you check the flight control hydraulics?" Olivia grabbed her diagnostic tablet and climbed into Morrison's cockpit. Within minutes, she'd identified the issue, a hydraulic accumulator showing early signs of pressure fluctuation. "You've got pre-failure indicators in accumulator 2. I'm grounding this aircraft until we replace it. Flying with failing hydraulics at high speed could result in control surface lockup." Morrison looked annoyed. "Lieutenant, I've got a training sortie scheduled in 2 hours. Can't we just monitor it?" "Sir, with all respect, I'm not gambling with aircraft safety because of a training schedule," Olivia replied firmly. "This fighter stays on the ground until we fix the hydraulics. I can have it ready by tomorrow morning." Morrison walked away muttering, but Olivia didn't care. In 5 years as a maintenance officer, she'd prevented 6 potential aircraft losses through aggressive safety standards that some pilots found inconvenient, but that kept them alive. What those pilots didn't know was that Olivia could probably fly their aircraft better than they could. She'd spent hundreds of hours in the simulator, officially for systems familiarization as a maintenance officer, but really because she was addicted to the feeling of controlling a high-performance fighter through complex maneuvers. She'd applied to flight school 3 times. Each application had been rejected with the same automated response citing physical requirements that she met easily, or candidate qualifications that were vague enough to reject anyone. Olivia knew the real reason. The old guard didn't want maintenance officers transitioning to pilot positions, and they especially didn't want female maintenance officers making that transition. It didn't matter that she had a mechanical engineering degree, knew aircraft systems better than most pilots, and could probably outfly half the squadron based on her simulator performance. The regulations said no, and regulations were absolute. That afternoon, Olivia was supervising hydraulic repairs on Morrison's F-16 when the base alarm erupted with a sound she'd only heard during drills. "Inbound hostile aircraft. Inbound hostile aircraft. All personnel to defensive positions. Scramble all available fighters." She looked up at the maintenance status board. Of the squadron's 18 F-16s, only 12 were fully mission-capable. 6 were down for scheduled maintenance or repairs, including Morrison's aircraft with the hydraulic issues. Within minutes, the ready pilots were sprinting to their aircraft. Olivia watched 12 F-16s launch in rapid succession, afterburners lighting as they climbed to intercept the inbound threat. She ran to the command post where Colonel Sarah Chen, the base commander, was coordinating the defense. Colonel, what's the situation? Olivia asked. Chen looked grim. Surprise attack by hostile fighters. Looks like 20-plus aircraft inbound. Our 12 birds are outnumbered, and we've got 6 fighters sitting in the hangar that can't help because they are not mission ready. Olivia made a split-second decision. Ma'am, Morrison's bird, the one I grounded this morning, the hydraulic accumulator replacement is complete. I haven't done the full post-maintenance checks yet, but the aircraft is technically flyable. Can you have it ready in 30 minutes? Chen asked urgently. Ma'am, I can have it ready in 10 minutes, but there's a problem. We don't have a pilot. Everyone qualified is already airborne. Chen looked at the tactical display showing their fighters being overwhelmed by superior numbers. Can any of the backup pilots get here in time? Negative, ma'am. The backup pilots are at the annex, minimum 20 minutes away. Chen stared at the display, watching their fighters being forced into defensive maneuvers. Then she made a decision that would change everything. Lieutenant Brown, your personnel file shows simulator time. A lot of simulator time. Can you fly that F-16? Olivia felt her heart race. Ma'am, I've never been in an actual fighter. Only simulators. But yes, I can fly it. Then get that bird ready and get it airborne. That's an order. We need every fighter we can get in the air right now. Olivia sprinted back to the hangar, her mind racing. She'd dreamed of flying fighters for 5 years, but not like this. Not during an actual combat situation with 0 real flight hours and enemies who would kill her if she made a mistake. She ran pre-flight checks faster than she'd ever done them, using her maintenance knowledge to verify critical systems while accepting some risk on non-critical items. The F-16 was flyable. The hydraulics were good. Weapon systems were armed and ready. She climbed into the cockpit, strapping into the ejection seat with hands that trembled slightly. The layout was familiar from hundreds of simulator hours, but this was real. Real engines, real weapons, real enemies. Tower, this is Viper 7-6, maintenance test aircraft, requesting emergency takeoff clearance, she transmitted, using the call sign painted on Morrison's F-16. Viper 7-6, Tower, you are cleared for immediate departure runway 27. Join the fight, Vector 035, Angels 20, contact Darkstar on Tactical Freaky. Olivia started the F-16's engine, feeling the powerful turbine wind up to full power. She'd heard this sound thousands of times from the ground. Now she was creating it. She taxied to the runway, heart pounding, 5 years of simulator training versus 0 actual flight hours, against experienced enemy pilots who would show no mercy. Here goes everything, she muttered, advancing the throttle to military power and then engaging afterburner. The F-16 accelerated down the runway with brutal force that no simulator could truly replicate. At 150 knots, Olivia pulled back on the stick. The fighter lifted off smoothly, climbing through 500 feet as she raised the landing gear. She was flying. Actually flying a real fighter. Viper 7-6, Darkstar, we have you on radar. Turn heading 030 and climb to Angels 20. Enemy formation at your 12 o'clock, 40 miles. Numerous hostiles. Olivia turned toward the threat, climbing through 15,000 feet. Her training took over. Scan the instruments, monitor the tactical display, check weapon status, maintain situational awareness. At 30 miles, her radar began picking up the enemy formation. Multiple targets, some already engaged in dogfights with friendly fighters. All Vipers, Darkstar, you are weapons free. Engage hostiles. Olivia locked her radar on the nearest enemy fighter and fired an AM-120 AMRAAM missile. The weapon dropped from her wing, motor igniting as it accelerated toward the target at Mach 4. Through her canopy, she could see the distant combat, fighters maneuvering aggressively, missile contrails, and the occasional fireball as someone died. Her first missile hit. The enemy fighter exploded in a ball of fire. First kill. But immediately 2 enemy fighters turned toward her, having detected her missile launch. They were closing fast, firing missiles of their own. Viper 7-6 defending, Olivia called, her training kicking in automatically. She deployed chaff and flares while executing a hard brake turn that pulled 7 Gs. Her vision narrowed from the force, but the simulator had prepared her for that. 1 missile lost lock, detonating harmlessly. The second was still tracking. She waited until the last possible moment, then executed an even harder brake that pulled 8.5 Gs. The missile couldn't follow the turn, missing by 200 meters. Now the enemy fighters were close, within visual range and maneuvering for gun kills. Olivia realized that all her simulator training was about to be tested against opponents trying to kill her. She pulled hard into the lead enemy fighter, bringing her nose around in a classic turning fight. The F-16 responded beautifully to her inputs. All those hours of simulator training translated directly to the real aircraft. The enemy pilot tried to match her turn, but Olivia knew from her engineering background that the F-16 could outturn almost any fighter at this speed and altitude. She kept the turn going, bleeding energy carefully while maintaining position. After 2 full circles, she got inside the enemy's turn radius. Her targeting computer locked on. She squeezed the trigger. The M61 Vulcan cannon erupted, a 6-barreled Gatling gun firing 6,000 rounds per minute. 20-millimeter rounds streaked toward the enemy fighter, several impacting the fuselage and wing. The fighter began trailing smoke, its pilot ejecting seconds before the aircraft exploded. 2 kills. But she'd lost sight of the second enemy fighter during the engagement. "Brake right! Brake right!" someone yelled over the radio. Olivia snapped the F-16 into a defensive brake just as cannon rounds passed through the space where she'd been. The second enemy pilot had gotten behind her during her focus on the first kill. She was in the worst possible position, defensive with an enemy on her tail. The simulator had trained her for this, but simulation and reality were very different when real bullets were trying to kill you. She pulled hard, trying to deny the enemy fighter a stable gun platform, but he was good, staying with her through multiple turns, getting closer to a firing solution with each passing second. Then, another F-16 appeared, one of the squadron pilots who'd seen her situation. His cannon fire forced the enemy fighter to break off Olivia's tail, maneuvering defensively. "Thanks for the save," Olivia transmitted. "Viper 7-6, who the hell are you?" the other pilot responded. "That's Morrison's bird, but you're not flying like Morrison." "Tell you after we land," Olivia replied, already scanning for new threats. For the next 20 minutes, the air battle raged across 50 miles of sky. Olivia engaged 3 more enemy fighters, scoring 1 additional kill with missiles and damaging another with cannon fire. But she also witnessed 2 friendly F-16 go down, pilots she knew, killed by enemy fire or mechanical failures during aggressive maneuvering. Finally, the remaining enemy fighters broke off and retreated. The squadron had successfully defended the base, but at significant cost. "All Vipers, Dark Star, enemy forces are retreating. RTB for rearm and refuel." Olivia turned toward base, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Combat flying required constant physical and mental effort, every muscle tense, every sense alert, making life or death decisions in milliseconds. Landing would be the real test. She'd done it hundreds of times in the simulator. But this was different, a real aircraft with real consequences if she screwed up. She entered the landing pattern, configuring the F-16 for approach. Landing gear down, flaps extended, speed stabilized at approach velocity. The runway appeared ahead. Olivia focused on maintaining proper glide slope, making tiny corrections to line up in altitude. The F-16 touched down smoothly, exactly where she'd intended. She deployed the drag chute and applied brakes, bringing the fighter to a controlled stop. She'd done it. First real flight, first combat, 3 confirmed kills, and a successful landing. As she taxied back to the ramp, she could see Colonel Chen standing with a group of officers. When Olivia shut down and climbed out of the cockpit, the entire group was staring at her. "Lieutenant Brown," Colonel Chen said slowly, "you just flew combat missions with 0 real flight hours and scored 3 confirmed kills against experienced enemy pilots. How is that possible?" "Ma'am, I've logged over 800 hours in the F-16 simulator over the past 5 years. I know every system, every limitation, every capability of this aircraft because I maintain them every day. I knew I could fly it. The regulations just never gave me the chance to prove it." Captain Morrison, whose aircraft she'd just flown, stepped forward. "Lieutenant, I've been flying F-16s for 6 years. What you did up there, those defensive maneuvers, that turning fight, the energy management, that was expert-level flying. How the hell did you learn that in a simulator? Sir, the simulator is nearly perfect for learning tactics and procedures, and I had motivation. I've been applying to flight school for 5 years. Every rejection just made me train harder in the sim, hoping I'd eventually get the chance to prove I could actually fly. Colonel Chen looked at the tactical data being compiled by the squadron intelligence officer. Lieutenant Brown flew 4 combat engagements, scored 3 confirmed kills, 1 probable, 0 friendly fire incidents, and brought her aircraft back without damage. That's better than most of the pilots with hundreds of real flight hours. She turned to Olivia directly. As of this moment, you're assigned to the squadron as a combat pilot. I'm issuing a field commission upgrading you to captain with immediate effect. We need every pilot we can get, and you just proved you're one of the best we have. But the situation was far from over. Intelligence reports indicated the enemy attack had been a probing action. A larger assault was expected within 48 hours. Over the next 2 days, Olivia flew 6 more combat missions. Each one honed her skills further, transforming simulator knowledge into real combat experience. She developed a reputation for aggressive flying combined with precise aircraft control. The other pilots started calling her Ghost because she seemed to appear out of nowhere during engagements, eliminating threats before they realized she was there. On the 4th day, the expected major assault arrived, 60-plus enemy fighters and bombers attempting to destroy the airbase completely. Olivia launched as part of a 16-aircraft defensive force, outnumbered nearly 4-1. The battle that followed would be studied for years in military aviation schools. Olivia engaged her first target at maximum range, firing missiles that eliminated 2 enemy fighters before they even knew they were under attack. Then, she closed for within visual range combat, using her superior knowledge of the F-16's flight envelope to outmaneuver enemy pilots who had more flight hours but less understanding of their aircraft's true capabilities. In one engagement, she faced 3 enemy fighters simultaneously. Using vertical maneuvering that pushed the F-16 to its performance limits, she eliminated one with guns, forced another to retreat with battle damage, and evaded the third long enough for another friendly fighter to engage and destroy it. By the end of the battle, Olivia had 7 total confirmed kills, making her the top-scoring pilot in the squadron despite having the least actual flight experience. When she landed after the final mission, the entire squadron was waiting on the ramp. Colonel Chen approached with a grim smile. "Captain Brown, the enemy has withdrawn. The base is secure. Your performance over the past week has been extraordinary. 7 confirmed kills, multiple assists, 0 aircraft losses under your command. You're the most effective pilot in this squadron." She paused, then continued. "I'm recommending you for immediate acceptance into formal flight school. But frankly, you've already proven you can fly better than most of the instructors there. The question now is, what do you want to do?" Olivia looked at the F-16s being serviced by her former maintenance team. "Ma'am, I want to keep flying. But I also want to help fix the system that kept me out of the cockpit for 5 years. There are probably other people like me, qualified candidates who get rejected because they don't fit some regulation that has nothing to do with actual capability." Chen nodded. "Agreed. I'm writing a formal recommendation that the regulations be reviewed. Your performance proves that simulator training combined with technical knowledge can produce exceptional pilots. The old physical requirements and candidate screening are outdated." Over the following months, Olivia continued flying combat missions while the Air Force conducted a comprehensive review of flight school admission requirements. Her success, combined with similar stories of exceptional performers who'd been rejected under old regulations, prompted major changes to how pilots were selected and trained. The physical requirements that had been used to exclude candidates were revised to focus on actual performance capability rather than arbitrary measurements. Simulator training became a formal part of the evaluation process, recognizing that hours in high-fidelity simulators could translate directly to real flight skills. Most significantly, the barriers preventing aircraft maintenance officers from transitioning to pilot positions were eliminated. Olivia's success proved that maintenance officers, who understood aircraft systems at a level most pilots never achieved, could be exceptionally effective combat aviators. 2 years after her first flight, Olivia was promoted to major and given command of her own fighter squadron. By that point, she had over 400 real flight hours and 15 confirmed kills, making her one of the most successful combat pilots in the Air Force. But what she was most proud of was the change she'd helped create in the system. The regulations that had kept her grounded for 5 years had been rewritten. Flight school applications from maintenance officers were now encouraged rather than automatically rejected. Simulator performance became a key evaluation metric rather than being dismissed as not real flying. At a ceremony honoring the pilots who'd defended the base during the surprise attack, Olivia was asked to address younger officers considering aviation careers. "For 5 years I was told I couldn't fly," she began. "The regulations said no. Automated systems rejected my applications. People who'd never met me decided I didn't meet requirements that they couldn't clearly explain." She continued, "But I didn't let rejection stop me from preparing for the opportunity I knew would eventually come. I logged over 800 hours in simulators. I studied every aspect of fighter tactics and aircraft performance. I made myself the most qualified candidate I could be, even when there was no indication I'd ever get to use that training." Olivia looked around the room at the faces of officers who'd probably faced similar rejection or doubt. Then, circumstances created an opportunity. The base was under attack. Every pilot was needed. The commander took a chance on someone who'd been rejected for 5 years, but who had prepared for that exact moment. She smiled at the memory of that first chaotic flight. "I was terrified during that first takeoff. 0 real flight hours, launching into combat against experienced enemy pilots. But the training I'd done in simulators translated directly to the real aircraft. The knowledge I'd gained as a maintenance officer gave me understanding of aircraft capabilities that most pilots never develop. And the determination I'd built during 5 years of rejection gave me the motivation to succeed despite the odds." Olivia concluded with the lesson she hoped would change careers. Don't let regulations or rejection convince you that you can't do something. Prepare yourself for the opportunity that will eventually come. Build your skills even when there's no immediate use for them, because when that opportunity arrives, and it will arrive, you need to be ready to prove that everyone who said no was wrong about you. The audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. 3 years later, Olivia was a lieutenant colonel commanding a full fighter wing. She'd accumulated over 1,000 flight hours and 23 confirmed kills, making her one of the most successful combat pilots of her generation. But more importantly, the changes she'd helped implement had allowed dozens of other qualified candidates to become pilots who would have been rejected under the old system. Several of them became exceptional aviators who likely would never have gotten the opportunity under previous regulations. At a reunion of the pilots who'd defended the base during that first surprise attack, Captain Morrison, now a major, sought out Olivia. "Colonel, I need to say something I should have said years ago," he began. "When you were a maintenance officer, I complained about your safety standards. I thought you were too cautious, too willing to ground aircraft for minor issues. I was annoyed that a maintenance officer was questioning my judgment about flying." He paused before continuing. "Then I watched you fly combat missions with 0 real experience and immediately become the most effective pilot in the squadron. I realized that your over-cautious maintenance standards came from understanding aircraft systems better than any pilot I'd ever met. You knew what could go wrong because you understood the engineering, not just the procedures." Morrison smiled with genuine respect. "You were right to ground my aircraft that morning. The hydraulic failure you predicted happened during post-maintenance testing. If I'd been flying when it failed, I might have lost the aircraft. Your engineering knowledge kept me alive before you ever flew a mission. Then your flying skills saved my life twice more during combat. I was wrong to dismiss you as just a maintenance officer." Olivia appreciated his honesty. Major, I learned from you too. Watching pilots like you fly taught me what works in real combat versus what looks good in the simulator. The combination of maintenance knowledge and pilot experience made me effective. I couldn't have succeeded with just one or the other. 5 years after her first flight, Olivia achieved her final goal. She was selected to command the same airbase where she'd spent 5 years as a maintenance officer being rejected from flight school. Standing in the same command post where Colonel Chen had authorized her first emergency flight, Olivia thought about the journey from rejected applicant to base commander. She'd been denied flight training for years by a system that valued regulations over capability, that rejected qualified candidates because they didn't match preconceived ideas about who could be a pilot. Then, enemy fire and desperate circumstances had revealed what those regulations had hidden. She was potentially the best pilot on the base, with knowledge of aircraft systems that exceeded most aviators and simulator-trained skills that translated directly to combat effectiveness. Her success had forced the Air Force to reconsider how it selected and trained pilots. The regulations that had rejected her application 3 times had been rewritten. Thousands of future candidates would have opportunities that would have been denied under the old system. At her change of command ceremony, now General Sarah Chen spoke about Olivia's impact on military aviation. Colonel Brown's story demonstrates an important lesson about talent and opportunity. For 5 years, regulations kept one of our most talented potential pilots out of the cockpit. Then circumstances forced us to give her one chance, and she immediately proved she was exceptional. Chen continued. But Colonel Brown's real contribution wasn't just her personal success. It was forcing us to examine why our system had rejected someone with her capabilities. The regulatory changes that followed have allowed dozens of exceptional pilots to serve who would have been excluded under the old requirements. That's her legacy. Not just her own achievements, but the opportunities she created for others. Olivia stood before the assembled officers, many of whom had also faced rejection or doubt during their careers, and shared her final thoughts. I was denied flight training for years. Every rejection told me I wasn't qualified, didn't meet requirements, shouldn't even apply. But I kept preparing, kept training, kept believing that capability matters more than regulations. Olivia stood before the assembled officers, many of whom had also faced rejection or doubt during their careers, and shared her final thoughts. I was denied flight training for years. Every rejection told me I wasn't qualified, didn't meet requirements, shouldn't even apply. But I kept preparing, kept training, kept believing that capability matters more than regulations. She looked at the younger officers in the audience. Some of you are probably facing similar barriers right now. You're being told you can't do something because of regulations that seem designed to exclude you. My advice? Prepare yourself anyway. Build your skills even when there's no obvious opportunity to use them, because circumstances change, and when they do, you need to be ready. Olivia smiled at the memory of that first terrifying flight. When I finally got my chance to fly, it wasn't in training with instructors and safety pilots. It was in combat, against experienced enemies, with people's lives depending on my performance. If I hadn't spent 5 years preparing for that opportunity during simulator sessions nobody thought mattered, I would have failed. Instead, I succeeded, not because the regulations finally accepted me, but because I was ready when circumstances demanded someone with my specific combination of skills. She concluded with words that would be quoted for decades. Don't wait for permission to prove you're capable. Build your capabilities and wait for circumstances that demand them. Because the best pilot on base might be the person everyone refused to let fly, until enemy fire reveals what regulations kept hidden. Olivia Brown had been denied flight training for years by a system that couldn't see past its own regulations to recognize exceptional capability. Then, one desperate morning when every fighter was needed, she'd launched with 0 real flight hours and immediately become one of the most effective combat pilots on base. Her success forced the military to reconsider how it identified and developed talent, leading to changes that created opportunities for thousands of future pilots who would have been rejected under the old system. Because sometimes the best pilot is the one everyone refused to let fly. Until circumstances prove that capability matters more than regulations, that determination can overcome institutional barriers, and that the person who spends years preparing for an opportunity they're constantly denied will be ready when that opportunity finally, desperately arrives. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.